the world just fascinates me right now. There's just so many movements going on when it comes to where we put our money and how we invest our money and how we invest our time. I mean, we've got the convergence of like 3 to 4 like really big investing trends. Number one is, I think, self-directed investing, right? Like this idea of like people that, like you and I, that maybe used to kind of use a financial advisor to help tell them what to do. You know what? I can do this myself. I've got the internet in the palm of my hand. I've got access to more resources and reading and understanding than any human at any point in history. I'm good enough for this. I can do this. It's really not that tough. It takes a lot of work, but it's doable.
You're listening to the Rich State of Mind Show, the podcast made to make you the total package in the entrepreneurial world and give you what we call a rich state of mind. If you are here looking to learn about real estate investing, marketing, elevating your business, and developing your mindset to get to the next level, then you are at the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join our community on richstateofmind.com. Now here's your host, Anthony Ritchie.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rich State of Mind, where I'm talking to Stefan Imhof. Stefan lives and breathes asset analysis and valuations. Prior to co-founding Alts, which we'll talk a lot about on this episode, Stefan was the head of product at Flippa. That is the world's largest marketplace for buying and selling online businesses. And so now with co-founding Alts.co, this is where you can discover and invest in best alternative assets. So they have tons of categories like artwork, billboards, cars, coins and currency, comic books, crypto, debt financing, domain names. I think my favorite one was when we were talking about music, where you can own music and, make passive income from, selling the time that people use the song that you own. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so maybe you might find something cool on the website. It's alts.co, but we'll talk some more about it in this episode. Stefan breaks it down pretty well. And I know we talk heavy on real estate and other assets, but maybe this may be your thing. Maybe owning music rights and getting song royalties may be your thing, or maybe buying baseball cards. It may also be your thing, and investing and getting, income from. So as always, please enjoy and thank you for listening. Hey, Stefan, thank you so much for taking the time this morning over here in the East Coast. I know an afternoon for you, or maybe early afternoon over in France. You're 6 hours ahead?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I appreciate you, because this is, like I said earlier before we start recording, this is a different topic that we haven't really discussed. Investing as a whole, yes, but in a different way that I think would maybe pique other people's interest. And sounds, I'm not going to, I hate to use the word, but maybe it doesn't sound as boring as maybe something like stocks or real estate investing. The stuff that you have up here is pretty intriguing, and I think can cast a wide net for people with different interests. I think that would be the best way to describe it. So if you could just please, explain to us a little bit about what you do and what you provide.
Absolutely. So alts.co is my company, and we actually started as a newsletter during lockdown of 2020. I was writing about kind of what I saw happening in the world of investing, which a lot of different trends were happening around the time. And one of the biggest ones is, I saw alternative investing as just starting to get really big. The drumbeat was just getting really, really loud. It kind of started, around like investing in sports cards and memorabilia. You guys probably heard a lot of the buzz around, Steph Curry cards and all sorts of, different sports memorabilia coming online, different marketplaces. But it's, I quickly realized it was so much broader than that, right? Like, it's not just about sports cards, memorabilia. There's all sorts of stuff to invest in now, from, artwork and wine to comic books. Everyone knows crypto. I don't even know if that's alternative anymore, but, farmland, you can even invest in stuff like, you can buy islands or fractions of islands and sneakers, and it never ends. So that's basically kind of how the business started, was covering all of this. And, for the past about year and a half, we've been building our audience. We now just launched our first investment fund. So instead of just covering these new markets, we're actually making distinct, specific investments in the best alternative deals that we see out there, which we can get into a little bit more later. But that's basically the story.
All right. So how'd you get started in this?
So, nothing better to do on the weekends for, about like 3 straight months back in 2020 when we were all locked down. So I had my newsletter and was writing about this stuff. And I was actually coming at it from the angle of one of my favorite alternative investments, which is website investing, right? So, micro SaaS, e-commerce content websites. At the time, I was the head of product at a company called Flippa.com, which is a marketplace for buying and selling websites, right? Cash flowing websites that you can just buy and sell. And so I kind of started coming at this world from that angle. Around the same time, my co-founder, this guy Wyatt, he had his own newsletter, and he was coming at the world of alternative investing through a lot of the aforementioned stuff that we talked about. So like sports memorabilia, comic books, stuff like that. So we never met, but I basically just rang him up one day. I was just like, look, I don't really know you. I know we talked a lot on Twitter and stuff. Like, how do you feel about, joining forces so we don't have to compete with each other because we're kind of doing the same thing? And he was like, yeah, no, that sounds good. And so we basically just joined forces. For the longest time, we actually hadn't met in person. We've been working together for a year and a half, but I only just met him in person last month, which is why I'm in Europe right now as part of this whole trip to see him in Europe. He lives in Spain. So yeah, I mean, we raised money together. We closed the pre-seed round together. We launched our Alts One fund together. And up until last month, I couldn't tell you how tall he was.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I would say that's going to be, I think that's going to be the norm. I have friends that I've been friends with for about 17 years, and they have friends that they met since we graduated from high school. And I became friends with them because of playing through Discord and, video games. I've never met them. It's been 5 years. We've been consistently talking every day and playing games. Never met them, but they're like my friends. I feel like they're my friends. And I will meet them for the first time, actually, when we go to see the Carolina Panthers play, I think the Steelers in December. So it'll be like 6 years, and I just met them. So I understand what you're talking about.
That's great, man. Really cool.
Technology.
That's it.
And so you started, it's called alts.co. And
That's
so
it.
you started that. What was the process of starting something like that and getting it organized? Because you have so many different categories, so many different ways you guys provide a service. What was that process like, trying to identify each category you wanted to service and then making sure you did enough research on it to be able to provide a service?
Early on, we kind of had this discussion of like, all right, do we want to go tall or wide, right? Like, so like, do we want to, just focus on like one or two categories and just nail that? Maybe we focus on wine or artwork and really get into the weeds on that, or do we just want to go broad? And I just wanted to go as broad as possible. That's it. I saw what was happening in the world as being much larger than any one category. I saw a lot of blending happening, right? People that are maybe like interested in, sneakers and video games, and then, but, they had nothing to do with like wine or artwork. And, we kind of broaden people's horizons and get people thinking and start making them understand that like there's so many investment options in this day and age. And that's our job, is to bring you those unique investment ideas, to research the markets, understand the markets, and just do the homework, right? Like do the hard work that no one else is doing on understanding what makes a good deal in each market, how to assess new investment opportunities within each market. Some of these markets are old, for sure. Like real estate goes back, 150 years of data and history and understanding. Other markets are less than 2 years old. I mean, like NFTs, like when we started, they weren't even the thing. When we started the newsletter, they kind of like fell into our lap, right? So, it runs the gamut between old and new, but each market's different. Each market requires its own level of understanding. So we have a team of analysts now to help us. We collect a ton of data. We kind of mix that qualitative and that quantitative, data, and that allows us to make great recommendations, and of course informs what we buy for our Alts One fund.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next thing, how you properly value alternative assets. Something like social media accounts I saw, or let's just say somebody has 100,000 subscribers or followers on Instagram, and then they put their value at, I don't know, they say 50,000. I would think there's like a business aspect behind it, like kind of what big businesses do, like the EBITDA, where they put together their, pretty much what they're worth, their assets, how much revenue they're bringing in. Like, are those things taken consideration with a social media account?
This is funny because like social media accounts kind of like a tertiary asset class. We don't cover it too much. I happen to love covering it. Actually, it's interesting as heck to me, because no one talks about it. And yeah, there's absolutely marketplaces where you can buy and sell social media handles, right? Instagram accounts, TikTok accounts, and you'd be shocked at how little they cost, right? I mean, you can buy hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers for, like a couple $1,000s. I mean, people are willing to sell their accounts. It's crazy. So there's a whole, math to it. I have a whole database that kind of helps you judge like which accounts are the best and why. But the real way to analyze a lot of these markets is through the comps, right? So just like in real estate, right? So with real estate, comps are everything, right? So when a house is for sale, it's like, all right, what does a neighborhood average, look like per square foot? How many square feet is this house? Okay, there's your baseline number, right? So it's kind of the same in a lot of alternative markets as well, right? So take trading cards, for example. So, you've got comp sales, right? So if there's a Steph Curry, rookie card and it's graded as a 9.8, right? Well, we can look at all other Steph Curry cards. We can look at all other 9.8 basketball cards. We can look at all other Steph Curry basketball cards. And we basically just triangulate the value, what we call the inferred value, just from loads and loads of data. That data is always changing, right? Right now, actually, cards are kind of down along with a lot of other things. Not everything, but a lot of alternative markets are down as well. So it's constantly changing. We're constantly tweaking our algorithms. But comps are the way to find the inferred value of all sorts of different assets.
I guess from what I understand, if anybody's concerned about, because everything's going down right now, and let's just say we have reached another recession, I guess the alternative asset I would want to invest in, if I will ever, as my anchor, to make sure I don't get shaken up a bit, is something that provides a good service. And since you have such a wide range of categories, I'm pretty sure that would be it. Pretty sure a lot of people would do some peer. I think you guys don't provide peer-to-peer lending, or what was it that y'all did?
What's funny about peer-to-peer lending is, I've been in Europe for the past 2 months, traveling around and meeting with a whole bunch of folks. And peer-to-peer lending is huge out here. It's really crazy. It's not terribly big in the U.S. There's a lot of big companies doing it, of course, but there's so much peer-to-peer lending in Europe. To answer your question earlier, what's kind of where do you want to be right now? What's kind of safe? So definitely not all alternative markets are falling, right? Plenty are falling along with everything else. I mean, but there's some that are doing just fine. Artwork and wine just continue their upward.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, comic books is surprisingly strong. For our fund, we're buying graded toys, action figures, comic books. Vinyl is doing really, really well right now. But the stuff I like the most is the stuff that produces cash flow, right? So it produces yield in addition to appreciation. So something buying a sports card, it's not going to pay you any money each month. It's just basically you're hoping to buy low and sell high.
Yeah.
Something like peer-to-peer lending is pure cash flow, right? There's no appreciation at all. It's just it's a fixed income scheme, right? But there's combinations of both of those, and real estate is one of them, right? Because you've got appreciation or depreciation if the market goes down. But the point is, you've got asset prices, and then you've got the yield. That's not the only one though. There's a bunch of other. My favorite is music rights. Man, music rights are
whoa.
Oh yeah.
Hey, that's
music
crazy.
Right. You get the appreciation on the catalog, you get the revenue from the streaming, and no one's talking about it, no one's doing it. I mean, there's a few big music rights funds out there. A lot of people have never even heard of them, but that's all on the high end, right? That's all. They're all making tens of $1 million sales, right?
Yeah.
There's no one buying anything under $1 million. So I cannot wait till our fund buys our first music right catalog. I mean, that's gonna be a fun day for me.
Yeah, I don't know why I missed this. Yeah, owning song rights entitles you to royalties, which are paid out each time the song is played or reproduced.
Yeah, and so what's happened is you think of Spotify, and the word on the street is that what happened with streaming is that artists don't make any money anymore, and that's not true. Here's what really has happened: artists used to come out with an album, right, and it would get a huge spike, or it would totally fail. But many times it did pretty well. Get a huge spike, and then it kind of goes down after 9 months, and it falls off the chart, and you never see that again, right?
Yeah.
with streaming, you don't really get those huge spikes as much anymore. It's really, really rare. But what you get with streaming is just a nice, consistent, slow, steady, very small, consistent increase in streams each year, right? Because as Spotify gets bigger, as there's more devices coming online all over the world, it's totally borderless and frictionless. You just get a consistency of cash flow and a consistency of revenue from streaming. So it's pennies on the dollar for sure. It's actually pennies on the pennies, to be honest. Like each stream does not pay much money, but it's consistent. And anytime you got consistency of cash flow, you've got something you can basically turn into a productized service. So, if you're an artist, right, and you're making, $30,000 a year from your streaming, right? So not like enough to like really live the life you want, but also not bad. 30 grand's great, So someone comes along, a fund comes along, company comes along and is like, look, I'll give you 150,000 straight up right now for your catalog. Everything you've written, you sell to us. Everything from this point forward is yours. A lot of artists would take that, right? They'd be like, yeah, sure. Now I can buy a house. Now I can live, whatever, So that we're starting to make markets now out of music rights, and it's just terribly exciting.
I guess just trying to figure out who to buy from at a decent price that you can see consistently playing. So like, who do you listen to?
I'm pretty esoteric, man. I listen to a lot of like random stuff, but I also understand pop music. Obviously, like what you want to do is you don't want to find the folks that are already everyone knows them. You want to find the folks that like have something unique, have a unique sound that you think will do well and has already shown that it's got an audience of some sort. What you want to stay away from people who are already sampling other artists, right? So like, okay, you remember Skilo, like the rapper? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Skilo was selling the rights to I Wish I Was a Little Bit Taller, I Wish I Was a Baller.
Yeah.
Right? So he's making like 25 grand a year off of that, right? He's probably like 50 years old now or whatever. He's like living somewhere and he's just like, I'm just going to sell the rights of the song. And so that song was on Royalty Exchange, which is a marketplace for buying and selling music rights. And he was asking like, I want to say like 200,000 for it. And I was considering buying it because I remember that song was a banger, man. I used to love that song. But I looked into it and he actually samples another funk song from the 70s for the beat for that song is actually sampled already. So I was like, oh, it's not original. So if anyone wants the beat, they would just go to the original artist and get the rights from the original artist. And so then really you just, it doesn't make it as compelling of a buy, right? So, there's all sorts of things to consider like this, but it's super exciting.
Yeah, because like every time a movie uses your song, uses that song, boom, check.
Yeah, absolutely. Movies, TV shows. Technically speaking, anytime a band covers your song, it's supposed to get. Well, that's tough to enforce. So.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's like a lot of legal fees. And,
And
by the time you get it, so that's pretty awesome, man. And it's not talked about a lot.
No, not a lot of people talking about it.
And so you said you guys are working on getting to the point where y'all have your own music investing hub. Or you already have it?
So we've with our Alts One fund, we've raised over $1 million now. We've started buying alternative assets. Like I said, we've bought a few assets so far. We bought some vinyl. We bought the Beatles' White Album vinyl record, number 2, the second pressing ever. It was super exciting. I'm a huge Beatles fan. We've bought graded comics, graded toys. What I was saying before is I would really be a thrilled, happy man when we make our first music rights purchase. Getting that done is going to take quite a bit of work. I mean, you can go to these marketplaces and you can do it through there. The problem is on a lot of the marketplaces, there's really not that many marketplaces to begin with. And the tracks and the songs and stuff that are on there, they're not really like the best deals. Like they're not terrible and you can definitely still find good ones, but the best deal is just, you got to go direct, right? You've got to figure out how to get deal flow. So how do you find the artists that are, like I said, making 30 grand a year, that $150,000 buyout or so might be really compelling for them, right? That takes hustle, takes connections.
Yeah.
We've got hustle, we're making the connections and, it'll take a while to make the right purchase, but we have allocation in the fund for this. So we're excited.
And that's awesome that this is, you're talking about $150,000 buyout, 35 grand a year.
If
That's
you can get
awesome.
it. I mean, you never know. You got to get the other person to say yes, but generally speaking, I mean, it's not unreasonable. I think it's a little, usually the multiple is a little higher than 5x, right? It's about, I want to say like 8 to 11, 11 to 14 for some of the higher quality stuff. And if you want to buy the ultra high quality stuff, like, I mean, let's say you wanted to buy like, Mariah Carey's, like All I Want for Christmas Is You. I mean, that makes so much money. Like the all-time greatest Christmas song. I mean, you'd probably be paying 40 years worth of revenue, maybe 50 years worth of revenue, I mean, so
Yeah.
the higher the quality, the more safe it is, the more you're going to pay. But, I mean, you can definitely, you can find 5x for sure if you hustle.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, but because when it comes to this, man, like we were saying earlier, there's so many different things you could do, and I like it. It's funny and it's frustrating, but it's fun at the same time because your brain will like think about so many different possibilities. Be like, oh, but I only got $50,000 right now, so I only could probably do one or two things at that time. But it does get the brain thinking, and like what you did, right? You raised the money to do that.
Yeah.
How does that work? So when you're raising capital, how are these people, paid? And how is it on a quarterly basis? And what type of briefings are you giving based off whatever the asset that you're investing in?
Well, so with the Alts One fund, it's a 10-year fund, right? So this is not quick flip stuff. This is like, it's for accredited investors. And the minimum, it's a $20,000 minimum. So we want to make sure people are committed. We don't want people just, cashing out after like a year or two. Like a lot of this stuff, I mean, some of the stuff we're looking to buy, like vacation rentals and farmland, some alternative real estate. I mean, these almost necessitate like 3 to 5 year holds, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a 10-year fund. Now we are there are ways to add liquidity options in the future. We can do a Reg A offering to basically create a secondary market for buying and selling shares of the fund. So that's on our roadmap. That's something we'd love to do. It'll take at least a year to do that. But as of today, it's a 10-year fund. So that's question number one. In terms of updates, if you've been on our site, like one thing, it's like we do a lot of writing and a lot of transparency. Like that's the name of the game, right? Because trust is everything. And we find our path to trust through writing, right? So we're constantly giving updates on what we're buying, what we're thinking about, why we like this, why we don't like that. And if you're an investor, you'll be getting quarterly updates as well. So
awesome.
No shortage of content. That's for sure.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of blogs, and I've always give props to when somebody has a great website design, clean and very simple, easy to go through if you're ever curious on, oh, what's that do? What's this do? And you have very great descriptions of everything. We've given some examples of what you can do for alternative investing, but what have you shown has consistently shown higher? What have you seen has consistently shown higher returns in the stock market?
I wouldn't say higher returns in the stock market, but in terms of so what we look for are things that are not correlated to the stock market, right? So like we're not against stock market investing even now. I mean, most of my stuff's in stocks. Like I'm not like pretending like it's like, not a great thing to invest in stocks. On a long enough time horizon, like stocks are like basically the best. I mean, frankly, but you're going to have periods like right now where everyone's hurting right now. It's tough. It's really, really tough. And you look at like something like crypto. And crypto is supposed to be like the big hedge against like stocks, and now it's the same line. It's all like just up and down with equities, crypto is, So what we look for is stuff that's not correlated, right? That just is playing by the beat of its own drum. And so that's why those are the deals that we like best and the deals that we look to purchase for ourselves. And so you're talking about specific asset classes. So like wine and artwork come to mind as really like playing by their own, to the beat of their own drummer. It's not really correlated to equities, which is awesome. There's some moments of correlation, but in the long run, it's a totally different asset class, right? We look at what's performed really well and what's not performing well. And, for a while, sports cards, memorabilia, that stuff was doing really, really well. It's not really that great right now. It's not as bad as like the S&P, but there's still like, I wouldn't call it a safe asset class necessarily. That said, just like anything else, like whenever the markets go down, whenever equity markets go down, everyone's like, oh, I wish I was more diversified. That's the worst time. Like you should have been doing that when times were good. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there's every market's different. Even within specific markets, there's sub niches that like are just underexplored, and you can make some great gains. Like so one of the things we really like to cover is what we call cultural assets, right? So this is like kind of like quirky cultural items that don't really fall neatly into another class. But this would be stuff like, for example, like there's original Apple iPods, right? Sealed original version 1, Apple iPods, like vintage electronics, like that kind of stuff. That would be like a cultural asset, right? One of my favorite cultural assets is there's a whole market for meteorites, right? Like the things that fall from, yeah, I know, I swear to God. There's like people that go to Morocco and they find meteorite dealers and they go out to the Sahara Desert and they look for the falls when they fall. And they end up in these like shops in Morocco and people make deals and buy meteorites. And I mean, it's incredible. It's insane. I mean, there's only so many of them, right? They're severely limited on the supply side. You can't make them like, and there's a fair amount of collectors out there, right? And so like we've interviewed like a guy from a company called Skyfall Meteorites. He's on our podcast. He's telling us all about it. And so now we're thinking like, man, like it'd be really freaking cool to have a small meteorite in the also one fund in the collection. But all of this stuff, the point is none of this is correlated to the stock market at all, right? Like that's the idea. It's like you want to be like diversified and like also just a great way to diversify. There's so much opportunity out there.
And I think the cool thing is identifying what drives the price up on these assets. What's making people want to have these? Like I am still confused on what is such a big deal about an NFT. I'm still like, why are we paying $35,000 for this monkey? Digital monkey.
It's a lot lower than it was, that's for sure. But I mean, I can give you my answer if you're curious. I mean, I think like NFTs, I think took everyone by surprise. I certainly didn't expect them to be as big as they were. I think with NFTs, it basically, first of all, I want to say that almost all NFTs I think are basically going to go to zero. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much garbage out there. Like there's so much like greater fool theory going on, and it's all just pumping your own bags and then hoping that like it's just greater fool theory, right? That said, there's a lot of projects. I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some projects I think that the team is incredibly impressive. What they're bringing to the world is worth paying attention to. So like Bored Ape Yacht Club like comes to mind for sure, right? So they just executed extremely well. Like they made it like a club. They give a lot of benefits to ape holders, right? I mean, in the form of airdrops, and I mean, it's giving a dividend. It's like a dividend stock, right? I mean, it's basically what it is. It's just not a stock, but there's all sorts of access at events like NFT NYC coming up. If you're an ape holder, you get in. I mean, they're becoming a brand, right? And Yuga Labs, who owns Bored Ape Yacht Club, like they did something really smart that CryptoPunks didn't do. They gave all the end users the full IP rights to the ape to use the image. So like if I owned a Bored Ape, I could take that ape and create a burger joint called like Bored Ape Burgers or something. Like that's like a thing, by the way. I didn't make that up. That's like I've seen that in Florida, I think now. But like the point is you can own that as a brand. So they're becoming like almost like a franchise. That's basically what it's kind of turning into, is like a brand franchise that people can use. And a lot of it's kind of like BS and a lot of it's just kind of like whatever. But at the same time, like the execution's been solid. I think they're going to you're going to start seeing them in TV shows and movies. And so it's entered the cultural kind of lexicon and like zeitgeist. And so I think that that's a good project for sure. And the price is way down now. Still, expensive, but I mean, we're considering, getting one for the fund. It certainly opens up a world of access and opportunity. So I'm still a little nervous about it, but because they certainly can fall quite a bit, that's for sure, as we've seen in the past few months. But I think that is what we consider like the closest thing to like a blue chip NFT would be like Bored Ape Yacht Club.
And I guess that's the way to kind of transcend your niche, is to be able to cross over into other realms, so that you're able to still have a presence. So yeah, maybe the NFT world may take a hit, but you became maybe such a household name, you're advertised in a TV show or where you're referenced.
Right.
So I think that's smart. I mean, well, that's why being a brand is always the best, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not just stuck at, only, what your particular niche is. You can be utilized in so many different other ways.
That's it. You become greater than the sum of your parts. You become, right. Absolutely.
And so what I always like to ask everybody is, what is your rich state of mind? What's your big why as to why you're doing this? And by the way, I think this is very helpful to a lot of people. So yeah, what's your big why on this?
Man, the world just fascinates me right now. There's just so many movements going on when it comes to where we put our money and how we invest our money and how we invest our time. I mean, we've got the convergence of like 3 to 4 like really big investing trends, right? So, number one is, I think, self-directed investing, right? Like this idea of like people that, like you and I, that maybe used to kind of use a financial advisor to help tell them what to do. I think a lot of more people are just, you know what, I can do this myself. I've got the internet in the palm of my hand. I've got access to more resources and reading and understanding than any human at any point in history. I'm good enough for this. I can do this. It's really not that tough. It takes a lot of work, but it's doable. So I think that whole movement of like people just self-directing their own investing and that where they put their money and effort and time, I think that's a big trend for sure. Number one. I think a big trend right now, and it's actually unfortunate, but I do think there's a blurring line between investing and gambling. And
yeah.
So hear me out though. So I don't particularly like this trend. I think it's kind of dangerous in many ways, but at the same time, first I happen to love gambling.
I do too.
So
I do.
But also like, I think it's okay. Like if you're trusting people to make their own decisions, you're trusting them to make their own gambling decisions as well. And like what we bring to the world is like, we're trying to take the gambling out of this stuff. We're trying to take the emotion out of this stuff. Like the example I always like to use is like, you see like a dinosaur skeleton that's for sale on like a fractional investing platform. And it's like, yeah, it would be really cool to own like a dinosaur skeleton, but like, how do you know if it's a good deal? How do you know that you're not just gambling? How do you know you're actually making a wise investment? You never know 100%, but what you do is like, you do the actual research. You try to figure out like, okay, like what other skeletons have sold? Like how many are there out there? What authority oversees the quality or we call the grading in many asset classes around this, and just try to make sense of the offering. So until you understand like if it's fair or not, if it's something you want to invest in or not. Can it fall? Does it fall? How often does it fall? Can it rise? How often does it rise? What's the fundamental value here? What does the supply look like? What does the demand look like? That's what we bring to the world. So we're trying to actually, we're trying to get people not to gamble, right? We're trying to get them not to invest with their emotions and actually invest with numbers and intelligence. And that's why I'm really proud of what we do. And the third, big trend here is just alternatives, right? I think, it used to be like, 60-40 portfolio. Used to talk about like 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Like, if that really hasn't served people that well. I mean, even like, it's really sad actually, because this was like the message. This was the message that was parroted for decades, right? You look at the past 20 years, and if you had a 60-40 portfolio when times were good in the stock market, well, you were just 40% of your holdings were just sitting there doing nothing in bonds, right? Now you think, okay, well, stocks are down, so my bonds are probably doing good, right? No, bonds are down too. So it's like, what difference does it make? Like, I mean, where's your edge? Where's your advantage? How are you any different than anyone else out there who's investing in tech stocks and who's just riding the same waves, right? Like, how are you any better than them? Where's your edge? So we try to give people an edge. We try the best we can to bring these unique investment ideas to people, to help them understand new markets. Some of them are great for some people. Some of them are terrible for others. That's okay. But the point is we have more options than ever before. And there's some very good options within all of these new options. And that's what we try to identify for our readers.
I think there's two things you mentioned. So great that you're trying to educate people, because I think the fools and the gamblers are going to be exposed in these next couple of years with things starting.
They already have been. I mean,
I think that too. But you'll see who was really unprepared and who was really smart and strategic. Probably by next year, 2024. I feel like, and not that I ever I would say recessions or downturns are needed. Obviously, people are impacted negatively, but it definitely separates. So you can kind of separates the cloud, like, okay, this is what was really going on. Now we see what was really going on behind the closed doors. That's why people succeeded, why people fall, too much leverage, all that. The other thing you said is that the amount of information that we have to us now. I interviewed an older guy named Paul Moore. He started real estate investing back in the 80s. You see him on Bigger Pockets sometimes. And he was talking about how he used to have to walk to the library. I think it was like a 15-minute walk to the library every time he needed to figure something out. There was no internet, going online, YouTube, university, I call it, or being able to do a quick Google search. Everything he needed to know, he had to read and find a book for. So I think that the information is a lot more accessible to us, at least to give me an idea of that this concept exists. And then probably I need to read a book to probably go more in depth or take somebody's course. So I think you're right. We have the most access to information ever in just a span of 30 years. Yeah. Or even I'd say 15, because even in 2002, I remember going to the library all the time as a kid. So I'm definitely fortunate of it. And I always say now, like, what's your excuse? Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has a smartphone. Even your person making $12 an hour probably has a smartphone. And you have access. You just probably choose what you want to expose yourself to.
We're not all born on the same base. Like, some of us are born on home plate, some are born on first base, some are born on third base. We can't help that. No one can help that. But we all get 24 hours in a day, right? And we all can spend that however we, choose. At the risk of painting too broad of a brush, I think the point is pretty clear. Like, it's a great time to be alive, man, and we got a lot of opportunity. Even, people who aren't so well off, as long as you got access to the internet, like, you can make things work. You can make a lot of progress and give yourself an edge. And, so we're helping people tap into that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, man. I really like this episode. I can't wait for it to publish, actually. Awesome. And get people get their minds getting a little creative, get their minds churning with a little creativity with investing and something. I'm about to drive to DC for a Comic-Con, so I got a 3-hour talk to have with my wife, actually, awesome. About diversifying a bit and creative ways we could do it. So I thank you for stimulating that for even myself.
Awesome, man. Yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.
Thank you for sticking with us from the start of the episode. Please share our show with friends and family, visit our YouTube channel, and view more of our content on richstateofmind.com. See you next week on the Rich State of Mind Show.